Welcome to Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. On this podcast, we journey through the devastating experience of the death of a child. Grief is seldom discussed openly in our culture, and the death of a child makes people feel even more uncomfortable. We approach the topic openly and honestly, speaking to people who have lost loved ones and experts who help care for them. Whether you are a parent experiencing loss or someone who wants to support another going through this tragedy, this podcast strives to offer hope and help.
Thank you so much for joining me today, Michael, on the Always Andy's Mom podcast.
It's my pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's fun that I am having a lot of people from all over recently. So
That's nice.
I know people have been asking. I think I just had somebody on from Australia. I've got somebody on from Australia next week as well. And so now you are joining us from Isreal.
That's right.
That's right. So again, we've got the big time difference, but not quite as much as last time with my woman from Australia. That was my
With
room
Australia,
was dark
it's about
and hers was bright and cheery.
It was about twice the distance. Yeah.
I know it is.
Yeah.
It is. So you're like close. You're like a neighbor now.
7 hours. Yeah.
So why don't you start out just by telling us a little bit about your daughter, Liel, maybe starting out by even that beautiful name that she has.
I am going to tear up. Liel means God is with me. Liel. And not the most common of Hebrew names, but you notice a lot of names end in L. Michael, Michael, Gabriel, they all end in L. That's
Daniel.
Calling on God's Daniel. It's calling on God's name. So he must have been with her because she had a very difficult birth, and she came 2 weeks late, which is not typical for a child with a heart disease.
No.
And no, they usually come early. She liked it where she was. We had a false alarm about a week earlier, and she said, no, not yet. They sent us home. She had a very difficult birth. We tried to have a natural birth, but our second child, or my first daughter before her, was a cesarean. And so we tried to have a natural birth, and at the last minute they decided to rush my wife Leora downstairs to surgery. And they told me later that they were very, very lucky. They said the doctor just touched it and it opened right up. Which means we nearly lost everybody.
Right.
But we lost nobody, and we gained Liel that day, and she had a very difficult trip. And when I went to see Leora later, she said, I'm not asking you, her name is Liel. And I just went, okay. And it's funny because it was, I think, maybe 10 years later or longer that I suddenly realized I should have disagreed. Now, let me explain that. I'm from European Jewish families, and my wife Leora is from Yemenite Jewish families, and in the East they have no problem naming children after their parents. In Europe we don't do that. We think it's actually not a very good thing to do, and it didn't click. But Liel is actually the beginning of Leora and the end of Michael. Liel.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of cool.
And what's really weird is the only reason I got that was because my wife at the time was a really big fan of The Bold and the Beautiful.
Okay.
And they just had it. Yeah.
Sorry, my grandma watched that, so that
I know,
just
but
brings
Laura
back
could
a lot
not
of grandma
get enough
memories.
of it. And what was the name? Ridge and Brooke, they had a child, and they named it Bridget, which was putting the two names together. And it was only because of that, I'm waiting for Laura to finish watching the show because I couldn't talk to her for a half hour. I said, wait a minute, we just did that. That's really bad. Because we did it like 10 years before, but
that is so funny.
But it's a beautiful name, and everybody thinks
it is
it's
a
okay.
beautiful name. It is. I love it. I love it.
And it means God is with me, and he surely was, because for all her trials and tribulations, she was a very happy kid who almost never was upset. It's remarkable. Let me tell you a little bit more about her. She was born with double outlet right ventricle, which is a very complicated heart. Basically, it means that the aorta was on the vessel that carries the blood out to the body was on the wrong side of the heart. So there's no way that blood is going to leave that heart and go to her body. So what happened? How did she live? The way the doctor put it, nature sometimes complements one defect with another defect that helps. And so she had a VSD, which was a hole in the wall. So the blood, the oxygenated blood, would spill over to the other side and find its way out. And you can live like that for not too long. So at age 2, more or less, they did the Rastelli procedure, which is they build a bridge to the VSD. And they use the VSD to build a bridge, and the blood is now directed towards the aorta, and she has a 4-chamber heart that works. Unfortunately, they also suspected, and they were right, that the VSD over time tends to try and close itself. So
Absolutely. That is a normal thing that happens.
Right, it
A lot of
does,
times we
but
monitor them.
but it didn't close enough that it was going to, affect her. It wasn't dangerous, but it did start to close. So they had to widen that hole, the VSD, so that they could use it to draw the blood across to where it needed to go. And the danger of that is that the natural pacemaker of the heart is right there in that wall. And so to save her, they basically had to trade up to a different heart disease. She lost her ability to pace her heart, and so she had 100% heart block, and so she was awarded that same day a pacemaker.
Yeah.
At age
Well,
2.
and it's interesting to see. Somebody might say, well, why did they do that? But you can't actually see the spot that's pacing. So you don't actually know
Well,
when you're
yeah,
in there where that
they told us
location
it
is.
might
It's not
be.
like other things where you can say, well, this is the pineal gland and this is the
Right,
thyroid,
right.
and it doesn't look any different on the heart, but that is where the electrical impulses then come
Exactly
from.
right.
So that's why it can be easily kind of, nicked in a way, or
And they had no
damaged.
choice, right?
Right.
They said going in, it's very possible that we're going to need a pacemaker after this. And later they said, yeah, we kind of knew that anyway. I mean, they presented it to us as a possibility that we wouldn't need it. And so she was on the heart-lung machine 2 or 3 times when they were testing, right, during the surgery, to see if she needed it. Whoops, she needs it. And then they put it in, and okay. That's a very, very short version of the surgery that she had, and nobody needs to go into it now.
Right.
But so at age 2 she got her first pacemaker, and at around age 12 she got her second one. So that was pretty good. You may want to edit because I'm going to cough. Sorry. So that was her, and then at around, we started noticing that she seemed to not hear very well. And so we had her tested, and as it turns out, she heard only on one side, but that wasn't really the issue. She was diagnosed as autistic at around age 4.
Okay.
And truth be told, and with all great glory to the heart surgeons, autism was, I think, a bigger problem for her and for us than the heart. The heart was pretty much taken care of.
Right.
We needed to keep her away from cell phones, but that was the only restriction on her heart. No medication, nothing. She was really very good. So that was difficult. And at around age 13, we found a place for her about 2 hours north of here where she could live and be taken care of better than we could do. And she was in a home situation. It was 3 small apartments, all on ground floor, all in a nice campus. And there were about 21 kids up there, and there were lots and lots of help, and there were great people around them all the time. And so she went there, and she went there very happily. She really enjoyed it. She really, really did. And I know this because I used to bring her home every second weekend. And the second week, I think the second time she was home, we're having lunch on Saturday afternoon. She says, "When am I going home?" Now, she asked me that here at home, so I know she got it. And that was nice. That was very nice. And while she was there, she developed epilepsy. About a year and a half after she was there, she developed epilepsy. And everybody laughed. All the people up there said, "Hey, they don't always tell you this, but every second autistic kid when they hit puberty is going to develop epilepsy. And we know how to take care of it. It's just a question of balance. It's all chemicals. We got this." And it took her quite a long time to get balance, but she did get balance and everything's fine. And then one day they called us, "You got to come up here quickly. She's having a very long seizure. She's in the hospital." That never happened before. So I ran up there. stay with her for a couple of hours. Everyone said, it's fine, we can go home. And I did. And then about 3 weeks after that, I got a phone call. I was working the overnight shift. I got a phone call at about 6:15 in the morning. And I saw it was coming from the home. I knew something was up.
Right.
And they said, you got to get here as soon as you can. She's in the hospital now. She has a low blood pressure and a low pulse, but it doesn't look good. They were waking the kids up in the morning like they do every day, and they were showering, and they would shower a kid and then look in on Liel, and shower a kid and look in on Liel, and shower a kid, and Liel's turning green.
Wow.
Yeah, just like that. I mean, boom. Nobody's fault, just these things happen. The other thing that they don't tell you in epilepsy is until about age 20, or now I find out actually maybe even 25, there's a thing called SUDEP, sudden unexpected death in epilepsy. I see you nodding.
I am nodding. And interestingly, my regular listeners will have known that too, because we've had 3 former parents on the show whose children have died from SUDEP.
Yeah. Well, our daughter's pediatrician is an excellent diagnostician, and she also didn't mention it because I guess there's no point in mentioning it. It just scares people uselessly. I spoke to her.
I think I've asked every parent if they wished somebody had told them that this could be a possibility, and every single one has said no. What would you say to that?
I can't tell you. I don't know.
Yeah.
I do know if I had known, I would have been a nervous wreck every single day.
Yes.
And that I would never have been able to make the 2-hour drive home and back to her home if she was in the backseat of my car. And I think, this could happen at any moment. I'd probably explode. Mm-hmm. So I think I was better off not knowing, but I'm not sure if I would want to know. To be honest, I can't answer that.
Right.
I can't answer that. I don't know. In any case, she was a wonderful diagnostician, and she called me that morning about some other matter completely. And I said, listen, I'm really, really busy right now. I'm heading up north. My daughter is she's had some kind of seizure. It doesn't seem to be ending soon. We've got a real issue here, and I got to get up there fast. And she broke it to me. She said, it sounds like SUDEP. And that's apparently what was happening. And she would have died very quickly, but they rushed her to the hospital. And that was a Friday morning, and they kept her on, I think, till Monday night. Mm-hmm. So we were watching her go in slow motion, which was really horrible.
Oh, that is horrible.
Yeah, it was. And there were some excellent doctors up north, and there were some less than excellent doctors. Yeah. But the head of the pediatric ICU put us into it right away. We got there at about 11:45 in the afternoon, and he was going off duty at 12, so he was waiting to talk to us. And he said, you've got 2 choices, bad and really bad. And really bad is that she might wake up.
Yeah.
Because the amount of brain damage by then, it was untold. It wouldn't possibly know. She would never, if she would survive this, she would never smile. She would never get out of bed. She would be in tubes, and she could live forever. Yeah. So that was what he called really bad, as opposed to just bad, which of course is what happened. So that was really tough. We kind of thought it wasn't going to happen that way. We knew that her life wouldn't be as long as maybe ours, but I would love to have seen her make 50 and not 15. And I think there was a chance without that she would have made at least 50. Kids with double outlet right ventricle are surviving this generation into adulthood. Many of them are over 50. It's a very rare condition. There aren't that many of them, but they're doing much, much better, and pacemakers are great, and surgery is great. And as far as her heart, wasn't much of a concern. Mm-hmm. And even the autism kids can live, forever.
Oh yeah, a long time. Especially in that kind of setting that she had, that really nice supportive setting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I would have liked for her to outlive me. I would have liked to at least see her make 50, which would have put me way into my 80s, and I'd be very happy with that.
Right.
But things work out the way they do, and part of my faith is that things tend to work out the way they should. Mm-hmm. And so I took a very accepting view of it, and I skipped right over all the other stages. I didn't deny it. There was no anger. He told me, bad or really bad, and I just went right to it, which was good because I was able to save my family, because they were doing the regular route. my son, Idan, my daughter, Sapir, my wife, Leora, would sit by and read from Psalms, which is what you do in the Jewish tradition when somebody's sick. And they were praying, and so was I, but I was praying in a sort of a different way. They were praying for her to be better, and I was praying for her to be well, to be safe. But I understood what was coming. And I remember one of my kids said to me, "You don't have any faith." And I said, "I have buckets of faith. It's just not like yours." He was telling me, "We're going to make her better. She might not even be autistic when we're finished, whatever it is we do." And I said, "Well, that's nice. And there's the wall. I hope you have a helmet, but I want you to run straight into that wall and tell me how you feel when you get there, because that's what you're doing." And everyone thought I was crazy. Nobody listened to me. But in the end, I was there to catch them, right? Because they all came falling off that wall.
Yeah, and it is hard. I've spoken to lots of people and lots of grieving parents now. And when you pray and expect the miracle and it doesn't happen, it can be so unbelievably devastating to them.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And that's the thing. I had set in my mind years before that if he took her, I was going to be finished. That was it. We just weren't going to have a relationship, me and God, anymore. And that didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
It did not happen. I think maybe I even got a little bit stronger. And the reason is because I understood in my way that faith is not necessarily transactional. You give me stuff if I'm good.
Yeah.
And that's a kind of faith. And people will say that, "Oh, please, God, just get me through this exam and I promise to be a good person." And they'll get through the exam because they find some constraint to do it. But faith is also understanding that sometimes the answer is no, and there are things you can't control. And if you can accept that there are things that I can't control, but things tend to work out the way they should, then you are in a position to accept the difficult moments.
Yeah, I have a dear friend of mine that was at a Bible study one time, and a very distraught young woman came into the church, and she had apparently just been at a prenatal ultrasound and had found out that her baby had died.
Yep.
And so she came in just begging for prayer from this group of these women, and they all started praying for that miracle for the baby to be alive the next day. And my friend was just kind of horrified, and as was I, because what happens to that woman the next day when she goes back and that baby's still gone? Because I'm a doctor. I'm not expecting. I mean, I guess miracles can happen, right? But I certainly wouldn't expect that to happen. And they did not do her a service that day, because they really could have prayed for her in an entirely different way.
Right. To find acceptance, to find understanding, to find a certain sense of calm.
It just was just the wrong way that I feel like they went about doing that, because I expect that next day she ended up having to have the DNC like they had planned. And that's what ended up happening that day. And then what's her faith now?
Well, I want to say something to the credit of those people who prayed for that. I don't want to say that's bad.
Okay? No.
And I don't want to say it's wrong, but I think it is a certain denial.
I just think it was a lost opportunity for something that they could have done better.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with you on that.
Instead of only praying, because they only prayed that baby would be alive the next day.
Right.
That's all they prayed. And that was not the right thing to pray. The right thing to pray is for God to surround himself around her and to bring her peace and comfort. And that if we could find it to bring that baby back, that would be wonderful. But if not, the love that we can give, anyway, I think it was a missed opportunity.
I agree. We had a number of miscarriages before we had our first child. And then we had another one after Liel. So the message was clear. But our first miscarriage was the longest one. It was at 5 months. Okay. All the others were in the early weeks. This was at 5 months, so she was showing, couldn't deny it. Everybody knew something that we don't like to talk about. That's another crazy Jewish thing. We don't talk about it until the baby is actually out. But you couldn't deny it, and it was there, and 5 months, and we were thinking about furniture and all kinds of stuff, and then the baby died, and we saw it coming in slow motion because it was CMV, and we saw what was happening, and there was there was a separation. We knew it was going badly, but this was our first time. A member of my wife's family called me up. The baby was already dead, and we were already scheduled to go in and do what needs to be done. And he said, I spoke to a rabbi, don't do it. Here's what you do. And he gave me a formula of things to say and do. And I said, you know what? No, I'm going to hang up, and please don't talk to my wife. Right? Yeah. Because the last thing we needed was this false sense of hope. The baby was already gone.
Yeah.
Okay, so the kind of prayer that we needed, the kind of faith that we needed, was something that brings us towards acceptance and not miracles. One of the things in Judaism is you're not allowed. It's wrong to expect a miracle. You can pray for a miracle, you can hope for a miracle, but it's wrong to expect a miracle. And if you do, it is not going to happen. By definition, miracles are unexpected, right? Miracles are, wow, I didn't see that coming, right?
Right.
So, right? A miracle is when the sea parts and a nation walks across the dry land. That's a miracle. But, if you know anything about having children, and of course, doctor, you do, it is such a complicated event, and everything has to go exactly right for 9 months. And then the delivery has to be perfect. The miracle is that anybody is ever born. That's a miracle.
That's true.
That's a miracle. True. So, again, I think my faith anyway is more about acceptance. I can't tell you that it's not transactional sometimes, right? What my brother, the rabbi, calls foxhole faith. Clearly,
yeah, right.
There are some days, like if, I was in a car accident and I'm thinking, just get me out of this. But in most cases, and one doesn't counteract the other. There isn't a right faith or a wrong faith. There's different kinds of faith. But I think in this case, and in the case of your friend, acceptance is a better way to go than trying to create a miracle.
It's not like they couldn't have done a little bit of both, right? I mean, that I think would have been the best scenario, because that's what the woman came in because she wanted the miracle, right? That's why she came in.
Yeah, but most humans can't provide that.
Right. But that's why I think a little bit of a combo would have been a better choice at that point.
I think you're absolutely right. And excuse me. Edit. I think you're absolutely right, and I understand that. But I do think that well, let me put it this way. My brother did an episode on Bereaved But Still Me, my podcast, and he did 2 episodes. And in the last one, we talked about faith, and he said in Hebrew there's two definitions of faith. One is emunah, which is the faith that we know, which is more of a transactional. I believe in God, and God will therefore reward me and give me stuff. And then faith is also bitachon. Bitachon also means security. Okay, I'm secure in my understanding that God has a handle on this, and that sometimes he knows and does things that I don't know or I cannot do. Now, we can talk for an hour about what does that mean and what is free will. I'm not saying that God is completely in control. We have free will. It's what makes us humans, is that he's given us the ability to choose between good and bad, right and wrong. So we have that free will, but there are some things that are determined not by us. And faith has to do with acceptance that whether I understand it or not, or whether I like it or not, God's will is what it is. And sometimes I have to eat a little to get through, and that's what it is. And as I said, I think when I came to that understanding, it strengthened my relationship rather than busting it wide open, which is, I think, a good thing.
Well, and I understand that that's interesting that you talk about 2 different types of faith, actually, because I know right after Andy died, well, wasn't probably right after, but I did try to go back to a Bible study that I had, and we were studying the Old Testament, and that portion of the Old Testament, it was very much like the God's people messed up, God punished them. God's people did good things, God rewards them. And it was all very much like that. And I couldn't handle it after Andy died. I had a very hard time with that because, and people have said, not to me, but people have said to people that I know when their child dies, well, you didn't pray hard enough. Like, because if your faith is enough, if you're strong enough, if you're good enough, if you do all the right things, then God will reward you, and this horrible things will not happen to you. So that can be
therefore a horrible thing means you were bad.
So a horrible thing happened to me. So I screwed up, Andy screwed up, somebody messed up, because otherwise, why would God be punishing me like this? You see?
Would it help you if I told you that I don't think this was punishment for you?
No, I don't think so either. But
I don't think God would take Andy, a beautiful 14-year-old boy who could sing and play golf and baseball and everything that was so good in him and so good in life. I don't think God would create that life to dangle it in front of you and punish you.
No, I don't either. But when you're in the Bible study that I was in, it was just very much going that way. It was just this kind of, if you do good, then God will reward you. And
sometimes no.
But sometimes not. Sometimes not. I mean, I went to church. It was about a year afterwards, and they were doing something. They were kind of a fundraising kind of thing. And so basically the guy was talking about how his wife had been sick and how he prayed her better. And it just makes me so angry because I've never prayed for anything harder in my life than on the side of the road that day after Andy went after that car accident. It didn't work. Right? So that's what's so hard about that, when people then believe that it's giving them more control than what they have. They feel like I have this control, and if I pray hard enough, or I do this hard enough, then my wife will get better, and I'll make lots of money, and I'll have a really good job, and all this stuff, because all I need to do is just this, and pray hard enough.
Okay, newsflash: you cannot really control God's hand. No, you really can't. Now, the other thing, Judaism talks about that. They face the question of an evil person who seems to be doing well, and a righteous person who seems to always have bad luck, or he's poor, or his wife left him, or life is going badly for him. How does that work? He's this guy who's been doing good deeds and being right and living right all his life, and he's got nothing. And then you see this guy who's a gangster or whatever, and he's doing great. And so they came up with an interesting answer for that. And the answer is, you are rewarded or punished for a minority of your deeds in this life, and then the majority of your deeds are represented in the next life. Now, we don't spend a lot of time on the next life, to be honest. We really don't. We don't spend a lot of time there. It's not a major concern of Judaism, but it's kind of there. It's a fairly new concept. It's about 2,000 years old. It's a fairly new concept. So the idea is, maybe this person who seems outwardly evil had a child and loved his child, or maybe, I don't know, he was kind to animals. I don't know. So he's being rewarded for that now in front of you, right? And maybe this righteous man has been so righteous that it's all built up for the next life. But maybe, I don't know, he cheated on a math test when he was younger, and so he's paying for that now. Okay, so watch out for people who are doing too well in life, because
you just never know.
You never know what's coming later. But to be honest, we don't spend a lot of time on the afterlife. It's not a serious concept for us. We just assume that everybody will somehow be in the afterlife. And there is a concept that your sins and good deeds are sort of measured and sort of weighed. And that's there, but the real focus of Jewish life is the here and the now. Right. So you do a good deed, or you do something right because it's good to do it. You don't need a better reason than that. Because they say a good deed is its own reward, right? Schar mitzvah mitzvah. It's its own reward, which means that you should live well and do well. And Jewish life is concentrated. Jewish life is concerned with how to live in this world now, and it doesn't really pay much attention to the next life. Next life it'll take care of itself.
So I want to go on to talk a little bit more about your faith in how that relates to grief, though. So last night, so I do a grief support group. I facilitate a group. And last night we were talking about ritual and how in our culture, in American culture, American kind of Christian culture, there is very little ritual related to death. You have a funeral or a memorial service, and that's it. That is the only ritual we have. Right. And we were talking about how that really is lacking. And I think back to after Andy died, in those first days, even, I remember thinking, I just need something to do. Just give me something to do, because I had no idea what to do. This funeral is sort of happening, but then that's it. And then that's done. And then I have nothing. I have no ritual. And I feel like you do that so much better in the Jewish tradition. And so I want to talk about that because
we're all about grief.
I wish that would. I just wanted something to do, and I feel like I could have had something to do.
Well, the truth is, you don't do much. You have a lot of things done around you. But let me go there.
But there's ritual. There's ritual.
Yeah, very much so, very much so. So, and by the way, you talk about American culture. They do it less now in America. Yeah. Those that are less Orthodox do less of it, and I think that's a mistake. Anyway, so what happens? First thing you do is you sit Shiva for 7 days. So what does that mean? You come home from the funeral and you sit on low chairs and you sort of sit in a position that's roughly biblical mourning. You don't shave for a week. You cover up the mirrors. Some people don't shower. But you're surrounded by family and friends. Your community moves in on you. Okay, so there's a constant flow of people coming in to talk to you, to, I don't want to say get your mind off it, but to sort of make sure, to comfort you, to make sure you're not alone. Okay. Mm-hmm. And it's very comforting to have friends and family who come in close. In my community here in Jerusalem, we have a group whenever somebody has suffered a loss. The meal groups go out to work, and we all bring food so that no one has to cook. It's all very well organized. You're bringing the salads, you're bringing lasagna, you're bringing this, food, everything. So for 7 days you do this, and you kind of get cabin fever, which is kind of okay, because what I find is that memories after loss go from bitter to bittersweet to bitter. Bitter to bittersweet to sweet. And that's a good thing. So you start off by saying, gee, I really wish she was with me, and I wish she was here, and I really miss her. And then you start telling stories, and you're around a bunch of people, so you start telling the better stories, right? The stories that make people laugh. And so you start smiling when you think of your loved one. By the end of the week, it's a laugh riot. Everyone's on the floor telling stories and about how wonderful this person was. And all the memories are good. It still hurts for sure, but all the memories are good. So what you have, and this is only the beginning of the process can be much longer, but for 7 days, you are allowed to go as low as you want and feel as bad as you want to feel, but there's always people around you. And by the end of the week, it brings you back up.
Okay.
So it's very controlled and it's very nice. A lot of people would ask me, it's one of the things you're really not supposed to ask. People would ask me, how you doing? How do you feel? It's one of the things you don't ask. But people ask it. So I'd always say, ask me on the 8th day, when you're all home, feeling good about having done a good deed for me, and I'm alone suddenly when the house had been filled yesterday and then today blank. Ask me on the 8th day how I feel, because then we'll know if it worked. And generally, it's sad, but and I don't want to minimize the grief, but you have had 7 concentrated days where you got a lot of grief out. You let out a lot of pressure. You let out a lot of steam. You talked.
I think really, truly showing lament. I think that's a thing that can be.
I think so. Yeah. I think so. Mm-hmm. And so that's the first phase, is 7 days, and then going on to the 30th day, you can, on the 8th day, you can go back to work. Some people do. I took a few extra days. You can go back to work. You can you have to sort of get up and walk around the block and get into your routine again and see people, right? One of the things they do on the 7th day is when they're finished, they get up and they walk around the block just to be outside. Okay. First of all, you haven't been outside for a week. Secondly, you need to return to some kind of normality. So there's that. Then up to 30 days, the mourning period continues. And here there's some difference. In Israel, on the 30th day already, there's a stone, and we go to the grave and we reveal the stone. If you've been saying Kaddish, which is a prayer for mourning.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, in most cases, Kaddish ends on the 30th day. So if it's a sibling, if it's a child, it's 30 days. If it's a parent, it's 11 months.
Okay.
I don't remember why. I asked my brother about that. He gave it on my podcast, and he gave a really good answer why parents get more. I'm not really sure what the answer is, so I don't want to make a mistake here. But in the U.S., you don't reveal the grave until after 11 months. Maybe for a child, you would reveal it at 30 days. Maybe it just when Kaddish ends. I don't know. But I think, no, and in fact, no, because my father died here. And on the 30th day, we had, the stone was in place. But we continue saying Kaddish for 11 months. Anyway, so the general mourning process can take up to 11 months. It can be 30 days, depending on who it is. But it's a guided process that takes you through this emotional trip and lets you down easy. It brings you back to where you need to be. Now, of course, you're never the same.
No.
But one of the things you need to do with grief is to learn how to pack it up and keep it with you, because it's going to go with you wherever you are. It's going to change you in some way. And I think we have an obligation to keep our loved ones with us and tell their stories, especially to people who didn't know them. I mean, that's how we keep them alive, right? We keep them with us in a very living sort of way. But in order to be able to do that, if you've gone through a week of Shiva and 30 days of saying Kaddish, or in the case of a parent saying 11 months saying Kaddish, then yeah, I think you are better equipped for that. I think you've taken the time. It's almost like a course. You've learned how to continue. You never stop grieving. You might stop mourning, but you never stop grieving. But you've now learned how to do that. And that may be, when you say is missing in society, that might be what you're talking about. Because this gives you the tools you need to go out and take that person with you. Liel is always with me. My father is always right up here, especially when I'm driving. But,
Yeah. We have some very good friends, and his parents, one is Palestinian and one is Syrian. And they, I think, are more vocal with their grief too. So they obviously, all their children were born here in this country. And when Andy died, so we're very close to them. I mean, to the point where we all went on a Disney cruise together. So like nice. This family, his parents, us, and our kids. So our kids would, like, we'd go out to dinner and our kids would stay a little bit with his parents. So they were close. And when Andy died, they mourned and really showed that emotion and were crying. I mean, his dad was sobbing, and he even said to my husband, "I've never seen my dad do that. It kind of scared me because I never saw him do that." And I've talked to his mom just recently about how she mourned after her mother died. And she said, "I scared my boys. They were all scared. They didn't know." She said, "I had to cry like that. I had to sob and cry like that." And she did that for, I think she said, probably close to a month. She felt like she would like just get and sob. So they're Arabic, but they're Arabic Christians. So they're from the Christian tradition. But I think that being from the Middle East, they were much more able to just show that. And it's interesting that it kind of freaked their kids out, because their kids are just American, and they haven't seen them really mourn in this way. But she said she felt like, even though she cried for a month after her mom died in that lament, that raw emotion, then she felt like even those days she would then just get up and just be more normal in her day, and be able to do more. And that she felt like she wouldn't have been able to do had she just held it in.
Right. Well, it's interesting about the Middle East. As hot as the weather is, so run the emotions. Right. I mean, people see it in politics, but it's really kind of true. Everything is more emotional here. Everything is more out in the open. Everything is more. Nobody's really embarrassed to show their feelings. Men can cry here, and everything's fine. And I think it's
cry.
healthy.
If I cry at work a little bit, like just with somebody, a colleague, something comes up, I start to cry. What do? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
They need to
what have I done? What have I done?
Just made you cry. You need to stop now.
No,
Hand you a Kleenex, please. Get rid of those tears. You know.
No.
Oh, please! I wish you weren't so bothered my crying a little bit, because it really,
because they think
it's not bothering
it's
me.
their fault.
Yes.
They think it's their fault. They think they've done something to you. They haven't.
No.
I mean, everything is a trigger. It could be anything. You know that. In your own story.
Things. The littlest things.
I think that's good. I think if more people got their emotions out, they would be better off facing the rest of us.
Yeah.
So
well, and just having this conversation with these two people, they do feel like it was really helpful to them, and in some ways, I think it was good for their children to see that, to really see that, and see that. Okay, yeah, mom's doing that, but I guess she's really okay. I guess it's not that she's falling apart and we have to bring her to a mental hospital next month. It's just, that's just the way she's showing her grief and showing her emotion.
I'll give you an example of that. My mother-in-law is from Yemen. She was born in Yemen. She came to Israel as a small child. and she gave birth to my wife and her twin sister. She was between two other women in the room. So she had a really difficult birth. She had two. She herself was not very large. And she was just exhausted. And on the one side was, I don't know if she was American or European, but she was, what a wonderful experience. I saw this and it was great, and a birth and a life. And on the other side was a Moroccan woman who was bleeding because she'd been beating herself and slapping her, because that's just the way they do it. And my poor mother-in-law didn't know where to put herself. What kind of place is this?
I guess I'm sort of in the middle, maybe.
Yeah, but it's like, and so it was.
What I want to talk to you about before we end up using too much time is we have to talk about your podcast and how that came to be, and just about what you do, because I have to owe you an apology. But you also owe me a little bit of an apology. So I owe you an apology.
I know what you're going to say, though. I know what you're going to say.
Yes, because I started looking for a podcast in 2019, about May of 2019, April or May. And I looked, and I could find nothing for bereaved parents. I could find nothing. And I told my husband, there's nothing there. And he looked and he said, there's nothing there. And so then I decided to start one. But in all actuality, you were there.
Yeah,
but you owe me an apology, because you were not easy to find, because you did not have a name like you do now.
That's true.
You have a name like you do now. I would have found
you. I will reveal the true story of bereaved but still me.
Yes.
The true, honest to goodness story. All right.
Okay, so you talk about it. I've apologized to you. So.
And I will apologize to you. I am apologizing to you right now.
Okay.
I don't know if there's enough room for me to get on my knee here. There I go. There we go. I have apologized. What was I going to say? All right. So we have a very dear friend in common, Anna Jaworski.
Yes.
And Anna Jaworski is the mother of Hearts Unite the Globe, which is a nonprofit organization, and it's all about families with children with heart defects, which is how I know her. Actually, we know each other from before that, because in the ancient days of the internet, before we could see each other, we had listservs. Do you remember a listserv?
I do, yes.
Email. I could write it here, and 800 other family members could get it in seconds later. Wow, what a great idea.
Miracle, yeah.
So, miracle. So we were both members of, I think it was called the Children's Heart Information Network, later became the Children's Health Information Network. I don't know if it's around anymore. But we had 800 families who were members from around the world, and we would trade stories. Sometimes we would argue, and sometimes we would just comfort each other. But it was a really big worldwide family. And Anna and I met there. At some point, Anna went off to found Hearts Unite the Globe and to start her podcast called Heart to Heart with Anna, which is still on. It's now, let's see, I'm 5 years. I think she just finished her 8th year. And it's all about families with children with heart defects. And it's great information. If anybody's listening now, Heart to Heart with Anna, go there, Hearts Unite the Globe. There's information, really good stuff that you need to know if you're a parent of a child with a heart defect, or if you're an adult with a with the congenital heart defect, you need to go and find out about Hearts Unite the Globe. So that's one thing. After Liel died, Anna contacted me and asked me if I would be a guest on her show and talk about Liel, which you can see I love to do. So yes. I did that. And when it was over, she said, Michael, I want to do a short series on parents who've lost children through heart defects. Could you host that? Because she said she's not bereaved. She doesn't feel that she could host it.
Right.
And since I like to talk, she said, could you host it? I said, well, how many do you want? She said, I want 12 episodes. I want one a month for about a year. I said, well, I'll give you 3. If I'm still alive, we'll do 12. And we now I'm editing a program with you today.
Yes.
And you're the first program in year number 6. Mm-hmm. So everyone should go listen to my program, and they should listen to you because, well, you have a story.
But it was called Heart to Heart with Michael.
It was called Heart to Heart with Michael because Anna had this great idea that every show that Hug would produce would be called Heart to Heart with somebody. So there was Heart to Heart with Anna, which was the mother show, and then there was Heart to Heart with Michael, and then we had another one with two adults with congenital heart defect, and it was their name as well. It was always, everything was Heart to Heart. And after about 5 years of this, or 4 years of this, after about 4 years of this, we said, people aren't finding us on the search. Mm-hmm. Sound familiar?
After May 2018, when I was looking, right?
Yeah.
After
and
that
we've been
date,
on for a
sure.
year. Mm-hmm. So we're not coming up in the search. We could get better numbers and serve more people if we could put grief or bereavement in the name of the program. Let's try that again. Mm-hmm. So for a year, before that, we were searching for a name. We could not find a name. There are so many podcasts now about grief. We could not find a name with the word grief that wasn't already taken. Uh-huh. Okay? We came up with some joke names, which I think maybe I'd best avoid. But, well, one of them. I can't bereave, it's not grief. But still, we couldn't find a way to get the word grief into the name of the show. So how are they going to find us? So we started thinking of other names, and we asked our listeners to help, and we put up a few different options, and they voted. And the one that won was Bereaved But Still Me, which I think is a pretty good description.
I love that name. Mm-hmm.
Because it says, okay, I am changed. I have been through a life-changing event, but I'm still who I am. I'm still who I was. But I've changed, but it's still me in there. So we came up with Bereaved But Still Me. And so suddenly people are finding us. It's a lot easier. Ratings are up. You found us. Everybody's happy. It's a good thing. So
it's much, much better. It's similar when I decided to do my podcast. My husband said, well, what about a name? And I immediately said, Always Andy's Mom. Because that's what I am. I'm always Andy's mom. And he said, no, you need more than that because no one will find you if you're just Always Andy's Mom.
Oh,
so if you know, my official title is Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom.
Always Andy's Mom. Okay.
Because I had to put that Losing a Child in there now on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, all that stuff. I'm just Always Andy's Mom. But if you look on the podcast player, the official title is Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. Because again, I don't think you would have as easy of time finding it. Now, I mean, maybe it would be even better if it had bereaved or grief in it. I'm not sure. But
no, I think losing a child
loss, that's pretty.
But
that's pretty
the other thing is that you created a very specific niche. It's for people who've lost children.
Right.
Which is a pretty big niche. Let's not belittle that. One of the things that I'm grateful to Hearts Unite the Globe for their executive board, one thing that I'm grateful for is they allowed us to expand the definition of grief. Mm-hmm. So I don't have to stay only in the congenital heart defect world, which is nice because my first complaint was, look, if I'm only going to deal with children with congenital heart defects who have died, then it's sort of looking like part 1 and part 2, Heart to Heart with Anna, and then you graduate to Michael. We didn't want that kind of we didn't want that kind of definite finality to congenital heart defects in a generation where kids are living forever with congenital heart defects. So we certainly didn't want to do that. So they allowed me to expand out, but I still have to touch it from time to time. That's fair, and that's really good. But then we've expanded it. We did some shows with members of the Firesign Theater, and I'm hoping that when I say that name, I'm touching some people my age in America who grew up with it. It's underground comedy from the 70s. But we talked to them because they were 4 guys in a comedy group, and 2 of them have died. And I spoke to the other 2 individually to talk about friends of theirs who had died after 50 years of working together. That's certainly grief. Mm-hmm. And they're not family, they're not related. And then we got even further afield. I had a very interesting guest. She was on twice. She's a psychologist, and she said, everybody's grieving something. Mm-hmm. Grief isn't necessarily the loss of a person. And then she went on to say, I was abused as a child, and I lost certain goals, certain ideals, who I was. That's grief. Mm-hmm. And then we suddenly realized grief really touches everybody. My friends, some of my friends, their first reaction was, I'll never listen to your show. Thank God I've got everybody. I don't need that. And I hope if they're listening, grief touches everybody sometime, somehow, somewhere.
Well, and I would say during this time of pandemic, everybody's grieving something. Everybody is. Our lives, nobody's life is the same as what it was 18 months ago.
You are absolutely right.
Not everybody's grieving something. So.
And we didn't see that coming, right? In 2017?
No. Not even at all. So, any more words that you want to say about your podcast or kind of your grief journey?
We're a monthly podcast. We come out on the first Thursday of every month. You can
Thursday,
hear us
just like me. So just so you know.
Oh,
Yes.
Listen to you first and then come on over. I'm still here. And the beauty of podcasting is it streams forever and ever and ever. We are literally on until either the end of days or until Hug runs out of money to archive it. Either way. So you can catch up. We've been doing this now for 5 years. You can scroll down the list and see which ones interest you. Maybe not every one. Maybe yes, maybe no. And it's monthly, so you've got plenty of time to listen to it. And if you miss it, don't worry, we're still around the next month. Every month on the first Thursday of the month, we put up the new one. And in January, we have, let me see, who do we have? Some doctor person. It's you. It's you.
When this one is released, mine with you will have been on for a week. So now I'm going to plug. We're going to plug that. A week. Go on right now. Right now, if you listen to this, the one with me on Bereaved But Still Me is there. It's there waiting for you.
And I got to tell you, it's pretty good. I'm editing it right now. Today I was editing it. It's really good. A lively guest.
We'll see how you feel about this one now the other way. So Michael and I too, I'm just going to say this. Michael is much more of a planner than I am. Yep. That Michael likes everything sort of scripted out a little bit. And I think it's been bothering him that I am a little more freewheeling. And I just say, we're just going to talk for an hour and not have it kind of figured out exactly what we're going to say. But hopefully you feel like it went okay today.
I was not worried that you would run out of things to say.
That's right. I don't run out of things to say. It works out fine every time.
I don't generally run out either. You said this on my show. I'm going to give a little teaser. I asked you to tell me something about Andy, and you said, you remember?
What did I say?
I said, that's easy. I love talking about my children. Yes, of course. Everybody loves talking about their children. So I come on and he's like, tell me about Liel. Sure. Can we do a 2-parter?
Yes. I thought, is it something specific? I said a lot of specific things about. So now I'm racking my brain. No, it's just that general. I love to talk about.
Really nice, wonderful things. It's a pleasure to listen to you. We don't use video yet. We're still toying with the idea, but it is a pleasure to hear your voice. And you have some really important things to say and some very compelling stories to share. And it's just.
Thank you.
You know what? I'd like to say it's a pleasure. It's not because we're all here for the wrong reasons, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
We're all here because this is a club we didn't ask to join, but we're in it.
And as long as we're in it,
make the best.
Then we might as well surround ourselves with other amazing people and learn from each other.
Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. And
I just learned so much from you. I love talking to you. So thank you so much for your knowledge.
Thank you.
I love it.
Thank you. Okay. I'm always happy to come back.
Well, That may happen, actually. I'm partway through and I'm thinking, I can talk to this guy again. No problem.
Ooh, yeah, sure. No problem.
You may have already. Something else. Okay. All right. Well, thanks again so much.
Thank you so much. I've enjoyed it. And it's a pleasure to be here with you. And what's particularly nice is that as a guest, I am not in control and I don't have to be in control. Just have a good time. It's a pleasure to be a guest. Trust me. It's great.
Thanks for listening to Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. Please subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast player. We are always looking for new show ideas. If you'd like to be a guest, know someone who'd be a great guest, or have a show idea, please email us at marcy@andysmom.com. Be sure to visit the webpage, andysmom.com, for more content, including Marcy's blog. There you can also sign up to receive updates via email. Together, let's work to inspire hope, one day at a time.